Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries. Today we're talking all about the Euros once again. We hope you've been enjoying the content. We've done some other stuff away from it, and I just want to remind you that we've done some very important output in terms of Christian Eriksen, two-part series in terms of physical health, but also mental health as well. So do subscribe to the channel because we've got so much great content coming out in terms of all sorts of factors to do with health, fitness, and of course, football as well. But first and foremost, I have to introduce the big man himself, Mr. Big Ben. You've been kind of on the channel 50% of the time. The other time I've been going solo like Jason Derulo. But yeah, how have you been, Ben? How has your team, in terms of your Fantasy Euro, been with this group fixtures?
Okay. Generally, I finished very strongly, which came as a massive surprise. What won't come as a surprise to you that I missed all deadlines on every format going into match day 3. So that was an absolute nightmare, given the fact that we've seen some heavily rotated sides. I think one team first up, I had triple Italy, Insigne, Spinazzola, and none of them played. So I knew from the off that I had maximum of 11 players. Fortunately, all of those 11 players came on to play. And yeah, look, I actually had a really good match day 3. With me Euro, I finished, I am in a mini league, in a cash mini league, and I finished top overall. Jeez. For the points scored. I think it was just around about 70 points for that. Had some big scorers in the fact that I captained Lewandowski. I had the guy from Sweden, scored 2. Forsberg, yeah, he done very well. I had Modric, so I managed to pull some out the bag there, done really well. And then in fan team, I was in and out of the cash, and then match day 3, like I say, just sort of cemented that place. Germany let us down massively. They are on my hit list, absolutely 100%. I know we've talked about it. Maybe I got suckered in by that result against Portugal, and I really did like them, and I fancied them against Hungary. I just thought Hungary would go out for the win. I thought that would leave them open at the back. I expected the Germans to exploit that space and follow on from those 4 goals against Portugal. Obviously, that didn't happen. But in between those, tournament long games, I did actually finish in the cash on the fan team monster as well. I came in a very respectable 220th in and around that place. So that returned some decent money. But again, if it hadn't have been for those Germans, I would have been up around maybe the top 20, top 15. So jeez. I was disappointed, but like I say, you can never be happy when you're walking away with pennies in the pocket.
Yeah, you can't be disappointed at that. In terms of my fan team, I think the fact that there's only kind of one transfer screwed me over a little bit, because it was hard to get that first game week team right. And then I did some transfers, obviously with the terrible situation with Eriksen, as we've mentioned there already. But one of my transfers was already gone with so many of my teams there. So going into game week 3, there was players that I wanted in, but I could only have 1 or 2. I took a hit on some of the teams just because there was so much that I needed to change, because there's a few individuals that just performed so poorly that I really needed to overhaul it. Whereas in Fantasy Euro, I've done quite well. I'm in the top 100,000 because of the 2 transfer rules. I could kind of move the team a little bit more, but also I played my limitless chip this week and I got a really good score. So no, feeling good about that. And I captained Depay. I captained Depay in one of my fan teams as well. So he got me a large amount of points. And so it's mixed feelings going into this bit beyond. But I think getting your tactics right is really going to decide, the men from the boys in this situation. It's going to really decide how your team goes forward. So just quickly recapping for people how the transfers go going forward. So in Eurofantasy, during this time between the quarterfinals and the round of 16, you've got unlimited. So going into those round of 16 games, you've got basically a wild card. You can't save that wild card. This is the only time that you've got unlimited transfers, but you may have the wild card that the game has given you as well, a bit like Fantasy Premier League, that you can save. Quarterfinals, you can do 3 maximum transfers without taking a hit. Semi-finals, you can do 5 without taking a hit. And then before the final, you can have 5 without taking a hit. Now, Fan Team is quite a bit different here. So you do have the unlimited. Again, you can't save that as a wild card or anything. Then into the quarterfinals, there's 3 free transfers. Before the semi-finals, there's 3 again. But going into the final, there is no transfers. So you have to stick with your semi-final teams. You have to almost make the really big ballsy shouts of, I'm backing this team to go into the final. I'm backing this team to win. So in terms of it, we're going to kind of address those 2 play styles during this video. And of course, we have to kind of start with who's got the best fixtures, who's playing who in terms of the round of 16. And just quickly kind of regaling my tactics, I think I can go a little bit more risky in terms of Fantasy Euro because I still have my wildcard saves. A lot of people have played them in the group stages, and so I can reset my team after the quarters and really have fun, almost taking a few risks with those round of 16 games, capitalising on some games. But in Fan Team, I definitely kind of urge people to have that more conservative approach and really plan who do you think is going to get to the final or the semi-finals at least, because you've only got 3 free transfers in both rounds going forward after this one with the unlimited. So yeah, kind of with that in mind, I do want to ask you, Ben, who do you think is going to be getting to the semi-finals and the finals based on the way that the draws have lined up? Because the tree is split in half, and so there's like an easy route for one team or a couple of teams on one side, and it goes to the same to the other. So realistically, there's only a few teams that you can really expect in those semis and in that final.
Big question, good question. Look, there's some teams that I really liked. I think the Italians, you'd be hard pushed to probably find a team who've performed better during that group phase. I would expect them to ease past Austria without too much problem. But then, they're coming up against either Belgium or Portugal. That's a tough call for me in terms of on the day. I think Belgium have got they've got the quality, they've got the strength and the depth. You've got the De Bruyne, you've got the Lukaku, but Portugal have got, Ronaldo, and he's been in great form this tournament. And if there's a spot kick to be had, then it's going to get dispatched. So it's a punt, but I will plumb for Italy as the first. Then I think France will be really happy with how things have panned out, particularly coming up against Switzerland. There will be a surprise result in this round of 16. I don't really see it happening with the Swiss and the French, so I'd expect them to progress. And I would probably, if pushed again, the Spanish haven't been great. Maybe they should. I know. Let's not read too much into that Slovakia result. But I would probably just have them to edge Croatia and France to maybe just get one over Spain. So that would give you a France and let's say Italy semi-final in one half. And in the other, no. We talked about dark horses. I think Sweden they've got a little bit of momentum, and they've got a solid foundation. Other than the fact that they conceded 2 against Poland, but inherently they've been keeping it really tight at the back, and they look a threat going forward. I can see them getting past Ukraine, who were hugely disappointing last time out. No doubt they'll get a rocket off Shevchenko, and they'll be a little bit more up for it. So it's a tough call, but again, I just see Sweden maybe narrowly edging that one. And then, of course, the Wembley showdown. England versus Germany. I had England as my flops, didn't I? And I know we're not fans of Germany. I'm just not a fan of England. Full stop. Boring. I think the tactics are poor. I think we've got the talent there. I think we've got the ability. We're just not able to unleash them in the right way. I don't think England have the right balance. On the face of it, we'd look at 3 clean sheets and a couple of victories and a draw. Doesn't really give you a big indication of how things panned out. Sunderland would, Scotland extremely disappointed, to get that 0-0 draw, because they probably deserved more on the balance of play. And the Czech Republic, they had already qualified, but they still had chances. Souček put one just past the post, and I know people will talk about the Raheem Sterling early chance, which he was very unlucky with. But I'm still not convinced with England. With Germany, I think there was a headline in the German newspaper after last night, and they used this sort of play on words with Forrest Gump. Football is like a box of chocolates, and that's what we've had. You just don't know what you're going to get. Started with a defeat, then a great result, and then a draw. I just see Germany being capable of stepping up and producing a big performance, whereas I just see England just being boring, methodical, machine-like, and what you see is what you get. And I think for me, that comes down to Southgate. It has to be Southgate and his tactics and the way he wants them to play, because individually they've got the talent, the Fodens. I don't know why Sancho isn't anywhere near the team. The Saka, the Grealish. You're expecting Harry Kane to, be Harry Kane at some point in this tournament. So for me, that's a tough one. The Dutch, I don't think the Czechs will be afraid of the Dutch in any way, shape, or form. And Wales and Denmark will both be happy with that draw. So I'm saying Denmark, and I'm going with the Czech. That's my surprise result of the round, and then Denmark to beat the Czech. So Denmark in the semi against the Germans, who will beat Sweden.
Jeez, that is a big shout. Big shout. See, now, in terms of my semi-finals, the reason why I asked this is because going forward, when we're talking about these players and assets and whatever, these are the teams that you should probably build your team around, like 4 core teams, get as many of their players as much as possible, because you think that they're going to go as far as possible in the tournament. Netherlands, I think, will reach the semis. I think they'll play, obviously, England or Germany. And I'm still undecided. Even the bookies are undecided. It's about 52% to England to win, 48% Germany to win. So they do have that slight edge, but it's really up in the air. The other side of the table, I'm saying Italy and France in that semi. And I think that it will be Italy versus England or Germany in the final. So yeah, going forward, let's have a look at the games then individually. Denmark, Wales. Looking at this fixture, for me, I don't like a lot of their assets. The data for Denmark themselves, they are favourites to progress against Wales, 69% to Wales's 31% in kind of betting odds. And looking at their kind of underlying data, Denmark have got some good stuff. They average about 0.87 XGA per 90 conceded, compared to Wales's 1.51 per 90, and in attack, Denmark actually have a top 4 1.95 XG per 90 so far in the tournament compared to Wales's. But looking at the team's output, it doesn't match up with these numbers. Denmark have been letting 0.5 goals in more per game, whereas Wales have been really fantastic and actually beating their defensive underlying data by 1 or more goals per game. So looking at that, I'm a little bit sceptical of Denmark because of that. Also, looking at the actual XG per shot that they face. So in terms of it, Denmark aren't allowing a lot of good chances, but when those chances come through, the XG per shot is actually the second worst. Only Macedonia let in worse kind of chances. And so that's where the kind of worry is that Denmark are kind of defending well, thwarting teams, but when teams do break through, they're really high quality chances, and so that is why it's a very tough fixture. And maybe in terms of this fixture, no defensive assets, I don't think, for Wales or Denmark, but would you put a gamble on maybe a Welsh or a Danish forward? Looking at it, Denmark, I don't know who's going to score the goals. Højbjerg seems to be the main assister. Wales, you can kind of, look at Ramsey, who has an amazing XG per shot, non-penalty, all this XG per shot is. And Bale as well, as one of the best creators in the tournament so far. I mean, would you plumb for either of those attacking assets there, Ben?
Look, I'm from the get-go. I spoke about Scotland and I spoke about Wales and being whipping boys. So I've got egg on my face with regards to that, but I'm still not convinced. Collectively, the sum of the parts are more, than what they are individually, because they're just ramshackle together. On the face of it, they shouldn't be anywhere near this round of 16. But for me, I'm not convinced. I do think they will fall at this hurdle. In terms of ability, like I say, I don't think there's massive amounts of difference between Wales and Denmark, but it's almost like the Newcastle of the entertainer days. If you're not supporting anybody or you need a second team, then Denmark have got this wave of support because of what happened with Christian Eriksen. They're coming on a huge high after that last performance, even to qualify for this, with that performance as well. So I think they're going to come into this with, like I say, a massive amount of confidence. Maybe Poulsen would be the player that I would probably pick out. You're right with Højbjerg, 3 assists. So that's joint top assister for the Euros in this tournament, which not many people would have seen that coming, particularly maybe Tottenham supporters, where he tends to play that deeper, maybe hold and roll and maybe seen as more of a spoiler. So yeah, maybe Poulsen. I mean, there's not a lot to like. It depends on where the budget's going to go elsewhere, as regards to will we be dipping into that maybe squad more than just the one. But we'll see. I can see Denmark keeping a clean sheet personally. I'm just not convinced for Wales. Although with the threat of maybe Bale and Ramsey and even Kiefer Moore, who looks an absolute handful, then on any given day they're capable of easy getting on the score sheet.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's such an unpredictable game that I'm really kind of staying away from their assets. And like we've kind of discussed here, that neither of them I don't think are going to get to, well, you thought that Denmark might get to the semi-finals, so you might have 1 or 2 assets there, and that's the right kind of way to play it. But for me, I think it's just a total avoid in that game. I can probably sit there and just watch it and relax and enjoy the football for once in that kind of game there. Let's move it to the Italy versus Austria game, though, and we don't really need to go too much into why Italy are so fantastic, why they're the pick. The question is, which assets do you get? In terms of fan team, you're only allowed 3 assets at this stage. In terms of Fantasy Euro, you can have 4 from each team. So which kind of 3 or 4 do you think are the kind of absolute nailed individuals from Italy that you have to have in your team?
I really like Spinazzola. He was a player that was on the radar before ball was kicked. There were concerns whether he would start or not, with Mancini possibly flip-flopping between him and Emerson. That hasn't happened, really. I think that performance against Turkey on the opening evening, he cemented that he's placed in that side. So I've been really impressed with him, really liked him. Immobile is a striker again, who we tipped up before the start. His international record wasn't great. So when we spoke about it, there was always that caveat that, can he replicate his domestic form on the biggest stage? And in answer to that, he is doing it, this far. So really like that call. Elsewhere in midfield, I would say I think Locatelli is a player who was stand out in the last game, who would be in there, and Insigne, he would be the 4. So I'm in on 3 of those. Locatelli would be the one who I would give some serious consideration for bringing in. But does Chiellini recover from a hamstring problem to come back in to help solidify that Italian backline? That might be something to consider. Donnarumma, goalkeeper. Again, we talked about a lot of budget options coming into the tournament. Kakea of Turkey was one of those. Dubravka, Slovakia. But really, those premium goalkeepers have stood up and they've been counted. And he's one that's, he's a class act. And like I say, if I was going to spend my money on a keeper, I think Donnarumma is going to be the one.
Yeah, I think for me, the mindset is almost like, I don't want to do what sometimes people do in FPL, where they go for a cheaper option and then kind of, scrimp and save and then think, oh, right, I'm going to save money and do it that way with the goalkeeper. Donnarumma starting each game week. He might not get the save points, which a lot of people are kind of looking for with the cheaper keeper, but he does have that clean sheet almost confirmed. Same with Spinazzola, but Spinazzola also has those attacking assets. So for me, my personal first 2 picks of those 3/4 has to be Donnarumma and Spinazzola. Just removes any worries, and you've got that defensive clean sheet covered. And then moving up the pitch, my first go-to, so the third kind of cemented one, is Immobile. For fan team, the points model, he's brilliant because he has so many shots each game, joint 5th most among all players at the Euros. So you're getting points anyway accrued just from him taking speculative shots. And most of the stuff goes through him. The Italian attacks, he's either going to assist or he's going to shoot and get the shot off and score. We saw that game where he was taking shot after shot after shot, and eventually he did get the goal, but he'd accrued so many shot points anyway, which was fantastic, so really good stuff there. Then there's a genuine toss-up in my mind between Berardi, because he's the chief creator of the side, most chances created, and the best XA of the Italian team. But then Insigne is cutting in. He's taking the shots. He's getting those extra shot points as well. And he has the most XG of the Italian midfielders. So it's a real toss-up. So if I was going to choose between the 4th slot, it would probably be Insigne as well. No point really talking about the Austrian assets because we're not considering them. They're not going to go through unless there's a real major upset. But let's move our attentions to the Netherlands then, who do play the Czech Republic. Now, this one, you said there's possibility of an upset in terms of the Czech Republic. I'm just going to talk through the data, put it to you, and then I don't know if that will change your mind at all. The good thing about when we discuss things is, first of all, we don't know what we're going to say to each other. We kind of make our own notes. We know kind of topic areas, but then we actually properly discuss it live on air, so how our brains are working almost. For me, the attacking talent of the Dutch side seems to say to me that they'll be going through because they have the second best XG per 90. They actually overperformed, and that probably shows the quality of their strike force in Depay and Wijnaldum. They had about an XG of 6. They scored 8 goals. And I think that this should worry the Czech defence because I don't like the Netherlands defence, and the Czech defence has double the XG against in terms of the group stages. So already that's kind of alarm bells that they've kind of been doubly worse. And you have to factor in who they're playing. A pretty poor England attack, not very good Scotland, and not great Croatia. Whereas you could maybe make the argument that Netherlands had a little bit of a tougher time. There will be a worry, obviously, from set pieces for Holland. The set piece strength of that Czech side will be something that they concentrate on. So I'm not too sure about defensive double or treble ups from Holland. I'm going to be focusing on their attacking players. And then looking at the individual assets, Depay, brilliant. Second highest XGI in the tournament so far. Second most shots, again giving you those fan team shots. Wijnaldum, absolutely brilliant. And Dumfries, just so good. Highest XG and highest XGI of all defenders. Just to give you an evaluation, though, and looking at my data, I was a little bit shocked at this. The Dutch side might be all right defensively. I found this really hard to kind of take, but the average non-penalty XG per shot was 0.06, which was the best of any defence so far. So the shots that they're conceding are really low quality. Then when you look at the kind of XG conceded as well, they're top 5 in the group stages. So they do have 2 clean sheets. Dumfries, I think, doesn't matter. He can get attacking things. But does that kind of change your mind a little bit? Or do you still have those worries there of Holland?
You're not telling us anything really that I didn't suspect, I didn't already know. It's hard not to like what we've seen so far with the Netherlands. We did have 1 or 2 concerns coming into the tournament, how they perform under De Boer, and was there a little bit of unrest maybe in the Dutch camp? Those rumours, those concerns have been firmly put to rest. But I'm looking for a result in that round of 16 that I think that possibly could be an upset. And I just think, we're so heavily invested in the Dutch and how good they are. And I'm on Wijnaldum and I'm on Dumfries myself. I just don't think they're as good as we actually think they are. You could argue that Ukraine was slightly unlucky, not to take something away from that. And I don't think the Ukrainians are great. It's the first game of the group, of course, and the tournament. But it's a big punt. I would expect the Czechs to be at long odds to get a result there against the Netherlands. But I just think they'll make it. They'll be very workmanlike. They'll make that very difficult, and they will look to stifle, that Dutch attack, that flair. In Dubai, you've got Barcelona. I think De Boer was saying now that everything's been finalised with his move, his contract, everything's signed. De Boer said we can maybe see more of the Dubai that we all expected at the beginning, settled, firmly focused on the Euros with no other, distractions anywhere else. So, maybe the Dutch will benefit massively from that. So, yeah, I understand I'm taking a huge, huge punt, and I know it's a long shot. I just think, they may be ground into submission by the Czech.
There is that possibility, and for me, I do think that the Netherlands' defence is still suspect. Even with this data, just kind of knowing how poor a manager De Boer is as well from his history, I don't think he has that technical quality, but I just like the lineup for the Netherlands to get to that semi-final. But yeah, I'm still really skeptical. It seems almost kind of again, you talked about classic Newcastle there. Their style is almost kind of going out there, thrill, entertain, and outscore the opponent. Not really too much worry about the defence, and that could see them through. And that could be really good fun and quality. You've talked about this Belgium-Portugal affair, and I think what is interesting is people are kind of pitting this as Belgium shall, walk through easy for them. But looking at the underlying data, Belgium and Portugal aren't actually too much different. I found this really fascinating. Ronaldo, Lukaku are brilliant forwards, and Lukaku seems to have stepped up a level this year in terms of in the Serie A. Ronaldo is just as good as ever, but Portugal are averaging at least a goal conceded a game, and at least a goal conceded in terms of their matches as well. So defensively, there's question marks there. They haven't let in numerous attempts, only 17 shots inside the box, but they're letting too many high quality chances in. They're 9th worst for XG per shot conceded in terms of non-penalty, average of 0.11 per shot against them. And overall, they have the 7th worst defence for XG conceded as well. So it's not great stuff. This is where the Belgians pip them, though. Their defence looks a bit stronger, better, and they sit top 5 for XG conceded in the group stage. But their attacks are actually equally good or equally poor, if you want to put it in that kind of spin. They're both not brilliant. And what Belgium have done well is overperform. Portugal have kind of, I don't know, skated through with penalties and those kind of opportunities there, which you just can't rely on. So looking at the team data, Portugal seem to have the third best XG in the tournament. Take away the penalties, and then all of a sudden it's unimpressive. They sit ninth worst for shot creating actions per 90, less impressive XG and unimpressive shots in the box. They're not doing a lot going forward, and it is these penalty opportunities. But Belgium's aren't much better. You look at it, similarly low level of shot creating actions per 90, so about the same numbers there. Worse XG per 90 than Portugal. And like I said, that they've heavily overperformed. Kevin De Bruyne, though, coming back into the team was fantastic. 8.67 shot creating actions per 90, joint most chances created in terms of that group stage, even though he missed one game, and best big chances per 90 rate as well. He could punish this Portuguese defence. I think that this game might be won on defensive performances and Belgium see it through, but I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as people think. I don't know if that changes your opinion. Do you agree with that, Ben?
It's a really, really tough call for me. The problem is on both sides, you've got match winners on the biggest stage. You've got players that can go out and, change games and win matches by themselves. De Bruyne, Lukaku, and Ronaldo. And as long as those players are on the pitch, that gives their respective teams any chance in any game. So it's tough. It's all fine margins, and then of course you don't know how the decisions are going to go. Penalties, sendings off. I think it's a really, really tight call. On paper, the Belgians, yes, should progress, but I just think you're right. Ronaldo off at your peril, and Portugal aren't exactly a one-man team. There's a lot of good backup there. I think Bernardo's been brilliant. Maybe hasn't got the returns that potentially he's due. Yota's been decent as well. So yeah, look, it's tough. It'll be a great game to watch. I'm sitting on a couple of assets. Obviously, Lukaku being one. I've got Meunier in there as well. He delivered. I think he came on for Castagna, was it, in the first game? And again, we were concerned whether Meunier would start. Well, the injury to Castagna cements his place in the team, and if he can, replicate that haul from that opening game, then he's a great asset to have. But yeah, it's a tough call. I don't think it might. I don't think it'll be as free and as high scoring as some may think. It could be quite a cagey affair, and just one moment of brilliance from one of those world-class players could, like I say, tip the scales in their favour.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, if you were going to invest in the assets, then who would be the ones that you go for? Because obviously we're saying don't do too many transfers. You need to almost stick with your guns on one team. My picks would probably be Lukaku, De Bruyne, Meunier. But then there's the equal chance that Ronaldo does well.
I've avoided Ronaldo so far. I made a decision at the start of the tournament.
Him and Kane.
To avoid Harry Kane and Ronaldo. Obviously, the Kane ones worked out quite well. Ronaldo, not so much. So I'm inclined to go the other way now, and maybe. Like I say, even though it's going to be quite a tight, cagey affair, it may only be those Ronaldo and Lukaku assets that I'm looking at, because I can't quite call it. And what I don't like is, if I'm going for an attacking asset in one team, I don't like then to start with some defensive assets in the opposition. That would be the difficulty. And I'm looking at a few of those other fixtures, and I'm seeing better, more solid, appealing defensive players that I could potentially pick. So it may just come down to Lukaku and Ronaldo. I'm seeing it's a very, very slight concern with De Bruyne. Really like him, but he's still not 100%. And there's just that part of us that he's maybe playing on that in that red zone. He's at risk of either picking up another injury, taking a big hit, or what have you. So I would stick with the two forwards, and probably that would be it for me.
So you're talking about defences there. I think the next game kind of offers that opportunity there. Croatia versus Spain. I think Spain should win. I agree with you on this. I think that they should keep a clean sheet as well. Their problem so far has obviously been putting the ball into the back of the net. Morata, I've got a personal vendetta against him because I had him in my fantasy Euro instead of Cristiano Ronaldo. Plumbed for him at the last minute and screwed myself over. But anyway, talking, not bringing my laundry out here in terms of everybody to watch. Looking at the team's data, Spain have obviously blown people away in terms of XG and chances created, whatever, but they haven't put those chances away. But the play style of the Spanish team means that Croatia will have very limited chances, but also means that the best area of the pitch that Croatia probably have their most strength, the midfield, Spain are going to dominate that. So Croatia are really going to be limited with their opportunities. They're not going to be able to play the style that they want to play, and their best area of the pitch is going to be absolutely thwarted. So I think that there's a high chance of a clean sheet here. Again, I've mentioned him lots of times. Jordi Alba is kind of the best defensive asset in that side. 6 chances created, 3 big. He's an important creator of the side. But an interesting one, you might like this as well, a differential Dinnery option pick. I've been impressed with Spain's set pieces. Now, going into the tournament, I thought that this was going to be an area that they might be caught out. I think that they do still have that ability to be caught out by other teams' aerial threat, attacks from set pieces, whatever. But they've worked on them themselves, and they've been one of the best kind of teams in terms of set pieces so far in the tournament. They actually have the highest XG from dead ball situations, most attempts from these situations as well, so they're doing really well. I don't know if part of it is the fact that they get fouled quite often, but the reality is there that Laporte is somebody that I think is a fantastic pick to be on those targeted situations there. Maybe Spain have realised, look, we're not going to be scoring a lot of goals from open play because Morata's not very good, and they're working on the fine margins of, well, we can score from set pieces. And Laporte is going to be that target man. He's done it already once. I think he can definitely keep a clean sheet against Croatia, but he could get on the score sheet as well. I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment of that Croatia-Spain match? And just quickly before I hand it over to you, actually, Ben, I'm not really considering midfield or forward assets from Spain just because they haven't been clinical putting them away, and the goals and assists seem to be spread out in the side, whereas at least with Alba and with Laporte, I think Laporte is nailed now. Alba is 100% nailed. He's going to be starting. That's kind of a good way into probably the most outlet of that Spanish side.
Yeah, I'm on Alba, so I'm already there, and it's certainly with a fan team. It's 6 million. Laporte, after his goal in match day 3, on the radar, and somebody that I will be looking to bring in as well. And ahead of the monster, I looked at that. I was looking for somebody to bring into that Spanish midfield, and I really struggled. So I'm like, you higher up that pitch, I just wasn't convinced. I almost went for Morata in attack, but glad I didn't.
Obviously, I'm glad you didn't as well.
And it's almost like it's that you get suckered in. I've done it with Timo Werner. He's getting in the positions, you're getting the chances, he's missing a hatful, and then you're working on the assumption that one day it'll just all fall into place. But by then, 2-3 matches have gone by, and you're already losing ground in the race. And so it's risky if you put him in. And for me, like I say, it's Laporte and Alba. And if you're maybe seeing a slightly different setup with the Italians, and maybe with Spinazzola, Insigne, maybe Immobile, then, and you couldn't put in Donnarumma, then I think Simon is a good option as well, the goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think it's a fair shout in terms of it. Obviously, I've said that I like the Donnarumma pick it instead of maybe Simon. But in terms of that as well, so with Euro Fantasy, obviously you can sub players out during the game week. Because this game is later in the week, if Donnarumma was to blank or might have a freak injury and have to miss that one game, Unai Simon would be a fantastic goalkeeper to bring in. And just to kind of re-emphasise the point of how bad and how much I dislike Morata, 2.9 XG, only 1 goals, 3 XGI involvement, 10 shots in the box. He's just absolutely dreadful. Sarabia, he's kind of done the same there as well. He's got 1 goal, but a high XGI involvement. He's probably one of the better picks if you were going to go for a Spanish kind of player. But Moreno as well. I just don't know what it is about the Spanish team, just can't seem to put it into the back of the net. So yeah, if I was going to go for any of them, I think Sarabia is kind of the best pick out of all of them. He's done all right, but they're just a bit of an avoid for me. Go for those defensive assets like Ben and I have said. France versus Switzerland. Tight game. I'm calling this. I think this is actually going to be a boring one. Do you think that this is going to be like quite an easy one for France, Ben? Or do you think that this is going to be a tight one as well?
I'm not saying easy. I don't think we necessarily saw a French team in match day 3 that was necessarily reflective of did they play to their potential? I think they looked a little bit off the pace, particularly the opening 45, a little bit lackluster. They had qualified, of course, so you question maybe that motivation. And they were coming off the back of a hard game against Hungary in difficult conditions, very warm. So players will be slightly fatigued. So there will be a little element of conserving that energy. But for me, again, the French, when you look at their squad individually and collectively, I would expect these to breeze past Switzerland. I'm calling 3-0 on this one. I don't rate the Swiss either.
No.
I'm not really sure how they do what they do. They're a tournament team and they get the job done and they seem to qualify for the knockout phases, but I'm just not convinced. Again, they're not very pleasing on the eye. They don't score a lot of goals. I look at that French team. Benzema will have a lot of confidence from his goals. Mbappe yet to really, light up the tournament, but we know what he's capable of. Pogba showed glimpses, of brilliance last night. Unlucky to hit the post. Like I say, got Griezmann. There's quality, throughout that squad. So for me, I'm expecting, Deschamps' team to really stand up and be counted, when it really matters.
Yeah, the interesting for me is I think it's going to be a lot tighter than that. I think it's going to be like a 1-0. Now, you might call me absolutely crazy. You're absolutely invited to come back. And with people listening as well, do put in your comments if you disagree with some of the shouts that we're both doing. But France, a lot of people think that they're going to be impressive in the group stages. They had a terrible kind of group of death that they were in. But they themselves just, I don't know, they were very conservative. They didn't get a lot of shots. They weren't fantastic like you'd expect them to be. And kind of looking at how poor Portugal have been defensively, how poor Germany have been defensively, the fact that they were outscored by Germany in terms of XG in that first game, it raised alarm bells for me. Now, I don't want to overreact to it, but it just, first of all, worried me. Then they had that draw with Hungary as well. I think I misunderestimated the Hungarian kind of abilities and spirit, but at the same time, France should be dismantling a team like that. It should have been, kind of like Spain's score against Slovakia. It should have been a 5-0 or something like that, and they struggled to a 1-1. So for me, there's a few kind of question marks over that. Now, looking at some of the data, I think some of the Swiss data has to be contextualised that, yes, they do have a higher XG than France in the group stages, but who are they playing? They were playing Turkey, the worst defensive or the second worst defensive side in the tournament. And in terms of their XG data, half of Switzerland's XG was actually in that game against Turkey. So you can kind of remove that. Also, in terms of their finishing ability, Switzerland haven't put away their high XG opportunities. It's kind of been a few screamers from Shaqiri to separate them. And you look at somebody like Breland Bolo, who's had loads of really good, high-quality chances, and he's just not put them away. So there is that ability there, as you're kind of saying. Personnel might be the difference. In terms of their defensive numbers, they've been quite close. But again, contextualised, France have been in the group of death. Switzerland have been against Wales and Turkey. Turkey just, I don't know what happened to them. They didn't turn up. So the quality of the opponents does kind of make me think, well, Switzerland haven't been that good. But as you said, they're a competent outfit. This isn't a France team that has hit their heights. But I do think that France will see it through because they do have that quality of personnel. I think that they will make it to the semis, but it's not going to be as amazing as people would expect. And I think that I'm erring on the side of having a few French kind of defensive assets because I think that Switzerland won't score. They're just not very good at scoring. But I'm not kind of investing in an Mbappe or Griezmann at the moment because I'm not sure if they're going to score a bag load of goals as well, Ben. But maybe I'm wrong on that one. What do you think?
We're talking about seasoned professionals of the highest level who are conditioned to play on the world's biggest stage. And I think, that's a huge factor. You have Champions League winners, World Cup winners, so when it really matters, these players are able to go out there and perform. And I think that's huge at this stage. Almost there's that air of arrogance about the French in the group stage. Yeah, it was a group of death, but you know what? We're France. We don't need to go full throttle. They will play themselves into the tournament. They play with a handbrake on a little bit, but if they play anywhere like their full potential, then they're going to absolutely blow them away. If Mbappe starts to replicate some of his domestic form, they're going to blow them away. If Griezmann decides that he wants to step it up, if Pogba does, then they're going to blow them away. If Benzema wants to carry on that goal scoring, form, and he takes confidence from that, they're going to blow them away. So for me, I'm calling a comfortable victory with this one. I think they've had their shake, they've had their little bit of a wobble, maybe a little bit of a scare. Now it's time to go about their business and do their job.
So let's get on to the final couple of fixtures here. First of all, we'll start off with Sweden versus Ukraine. I managed to match up their two names there. This is another tight fixture. I think Sweden will go through with this one. Now, in terms of Euro fantasy, this might be an opportunity to experiment with a Forsberg or some of their defensive assets with the wild card. But the problem is obviously this is the last game of that round of 16. So if you do experiment and it goes wrong, you can't sub these players in and out. And in terms of fan team, you're stuck with those players if it goes wrong and Ukraine wins or whatever. So again, this is a fixture that I'm not really looking to invest in too much because I want to make as minimal transfers as possible in fan team and in fantasy Euro. I kind of just want to focus on the teams and the fixtures that are going to do really well. So we'll get on to the England-Germany one. But again, this is a really, really difficult one. You're backing Germany. I'm not sure who I'm backing, but let me just talk you through the data because that's kind of all that I go off of and obviously watching, the eye test as well. But England go into this as arguably the second best defence in the tournament. Their overall XG conceded is only bettered by Italy. And actually, in terms of non-penalty XG per shot conceded, England are the best for that. So that's really fascinating. And obviously Italy and the Azzurri are the only teams that had clean sheets throughout the whole of the group stage. Contrast this to Germany, who you and I were sceptical going into the tournament in terms of their abilities, and that they've shown this. They were pretty poor. They were bottom 3 for non-penalty XG per shot conceded. So when Germany are conceding shots, they're of really high quality, and they've let in a lot of goals as well. Looking at their forward, looking at their attacking, England's players, they've obviously got those high quality players, and when they do break, their shots are of high quality. They actually match Germany's non-penalty XG per shot, and England beat Germany in terms of big chances created in that group stage. So does that mean that, when or if England get 1 or 2 limited chances, will they score against a porous Germany defence? I don't know. The other argument is Germany keep getting opportunities, and so in terms of it, they have 3 times the number of goals as England, twice as many shots in the box, higher XG than England in that group stage. So it's almost kind of like the immovable object comes against the unstoppable force. Like, which one, attack, defence, which is going to come out on top? Because Germany's attack seems to be so much better, but England's defence is so steely. In these tournament kind of situations, I feel like you have to back the defence, because defences win you these tournaments. You've seen Portugal do it, you've seen Greece do it, almost stoke their way to a victory in terms of Stoke City FC. They make it like a rainy night up in Stoke for a lot of these teams. They make it difficult, and so you're not losing the match. It's a negative style of football, but then Germany have such good players going forward. It's really, really difficult. And as I said, whoever wins this, I think, will join Italy in the final of the tournament. And so I'm holding off buying any assets from these two in terms of fan team until the quarterfinals, till I know who's there. But would you risk it, Ben? You're going to go with Germany, aren't you?
I do fancy Germany. It is a tough call. I've been on John Stones since the start of the tournament, so I'm very happy with 3 clean sheets locked in. He was a great buy at 6 million at the beginning. The cheapest asset into that back line, he was almost guaranteed a start. With Harry Maguire returning to fitness, more or less, although he didn't train at the time of recording on Thursday with the squad, so that who John Stones sits alongside, Mings or Maguire, remains to be seen. Am I tempted to leave Stones in? I'll think about it. With regards to Germany, I'm on Goossens. For obvious reasons, I think that game against Portugal he was absolutely unbelievable. Not only did he get the goal and assist, but he also had one disallowed as well. This is the derby. This is almost the form book, the data, the statistics. It all just gets ripped up. Of course, it's at Wembley, so there may be a slight advantage, with England being the home nation there. The crowd, the atmosphere will be electric. There's so much pressure and resting on this game. I don't know. I think England should have walked that group. You would prior to the tournament start, you'd look at that and you'd think, I expected 3 clean sheets, and to be honest, I expected 3 easy victories. I didn't really think there was much in that group to really threaten us on an individual level. And I just think those narrow 1-0 victories are mask some a few weaknesses and a few concerns within that team that we're getting opened up, and teams creating chances as they did quite easily against us was a worry and a concern. And like I said, for me, that goes back to Southgate, because I think individually, we do have the quality to be able to go out and really blitz teams, but for whatever reason, we're not able to do that and haven't been allowed to do that. And I just don't think you can flick the switch. And if England go a goal behind, I do expect Germany to score. If England go a goal behind, are they then capable of changing their style and really stepping it up to try and get that goal back? Or, I can argue, with those question marks with regards to Raheem Sterling on the back of a terrible season, and really shouldn't have been anywhere near that England starting 11, in my opinion. But he's probably been, one of England's brightest sparks. And is that more of a reflection against Sterling, or more of a reflection against England generally in their attacking outputs? Look, I love Jack Grealish. I think he's an absolute great player. Is he going to be able to take the handbrake off and just go out there and attack the Germans? I'm just not so sure. I'm just not convinced that Southgate will turn around and tell these players just to go out, enjoy yourself, express yourself, and go and get, and do a job on Germany. I think they'll be conservative, and I think that'll play into the Germans' hands, and that's why I think Germany will get the result.
So with the result of our discussions today, the final thing that I have to ask you about, Ben, is there any major injury concerns going into this round of 16 that people need to be worried about, need to be, looking for their possible teams, or do you think that it's not too worrisome and that people can kind of proceed without too much caution?
I mean, there's a couple of injuries certainly to flag and highlight. We've seen Lucas Digne pull up for France after following his introduction just last night. Now, I'd be very surprised if he was to play any more minutes in this tournament. So, like I say, that's a little bit of a worry. Elsewhere, we don't have, there aren't like sort of huge issues elsewhere. There are players, of course, that are being managed and monitored. We've seen Thomas Muller. He's been managing a knee issue that kept him on the bench last night. The Italians, we've seen Florenzi, he's been struggling with a calf problem, and Chiellini with a hamstring issue. But certainly with the former, it doesn't appear to have a massive impact on the team because he hasn't played any part in this tournament so far. The Dutch have lost Luc de Jong, again, a more of a bit part player, nothing really to sort of get overly concerned about with regards to that. And elsewhere, there's nothing really that sticks to mind. That generally, considering how congested this season has been and the concerns heading into the tournament, we've managed to escape. With the exception, of course, of Christian Eriksen. Anything really sort of serious and sinister to those high-profile players. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that that continues.
So with that is the end of our discussions here. Just to remind people, please do subscribe to the channel. Make sure to like, share the video with friends. We've had fun discussing it with you. But as always, you can send in comments as well. Ask us questions. I'll be looking at the data kind of with my triple computer screen so that I can, go between the three and get all this stuff there for you. But as always, I wish you the best of luck, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Ben to sign us out.
Yeah, fantastic, Jason. As always, with the data and the numbers and statistics. And if you haven't been following Jason's social media account, why not? Because he's been producing it both pre-match and post-match after every game in this tournament. Check out Jason _R_McKenna. I do retweet all of his stuff as well. So if you can't find him through that, by all means, comment at Ben Dinnery and check out our YouTube channel, because there's loads of content. A lot of it's still relevant. If you want to look at the data, even pre-tournament stuff, that will carry through as well, in addition, and to supplement some of this latest stuff that we're producing. But for now, good luck, everybody, in this round 16. Really excited to see how this one pans out. I'm expecting a few pelters for my Netherlands prediction. So, go easy in the comments. But yeah, please feel free to express your own thoughts and tell me how stupid I am in the nicest possible way. But for now, we'll see you again very soon.